Hey everybody, Coach Keith Keppner here. We're going to talk about 3 boxing footwork drills you can do with tape. All right. Now, you're going to need 3 things in order to do this and to get the most bang for your buck. And I also want to be clear as well that these drills are not super uber fancy. It's not going to be some elaborate artistic design, geometric shapes that you're going to do on your floor. You're going to do a pretty simple thing with the tape, and then we're going to move forward with that because simplicity is if we make complicated things simple and do the highest leverage activities, that is how we become successful with something. All right, so the 3 things that you need, though, first is you need a space on the floor, right? If you don't have any space on the floor to do this, you can't do it. Ideally, some type of flat floor that, is concrete or linoleum floor or gym mat. Then the second thing is get some painter's tape. No, don't be like those dudes that get the duct tape and slap it down on the floor. And now you have all this leftover goo from the duct tape when you eventually rip it up. Be smart. Use what other people have done before you, just with other things that are smart, and use painter's tape so you can take it off. You can change it around if you want to, and it doesn't leave an icky residue that frankly just makes a horrible mopping challenge that you're probably never going to do much about, and then now you're going to have an impression of this thing on the floor for the rest of the floor's existence. As you can see, I've dealt with this crap. Then, number 3, though, the number 3 thing you need, which is actually perhaps one of the most important things you need, I'm going to tell you at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around for that, but it's going to make all of your footwork drills better, okay? Also, before we jump in, guys, make sure you click the like button if you like this, subscribe, comment below, consider joining level 2 as a channel member, and buy me a cup of coffee with a super thanks. All right, so the first footwork drill we're going to do, and we're going to do all these drills with just a strip of tape on the floor. One line, right? One line. How more simple could we get than one line? We could get more simple, all right? But again, let's do the highest leverage stuff. So the first thing we're going to do, and again, this is maybe a little bit better for beginners, people that, are kind of just getting into boxing, so it might be you watching this. We're going to just work on making sure that our feet are not crossed. And also, then we're going to utilize this for straight attacks, all right? But this all is encompassed in the number 1 drill, or the first drill out of the 3 that we can do with this tape. Now, let's talk about the feet offline concept. Why do we want our feet offline and not one foot in front of the other directly? All right, like in essence, standing on a tightrope. Well, modern boxing is derived from fencing, and fencers, they are on a tightrope. Why can they be on a tightrope? Because if you've ever watched a fencing match, and there's actually a fencing gym here in town, their attacks are done forward and backwards only. There's no lateral movement. And the moment you put lateral movement into a sport, automatically the feet are going to come offline, meaning they're not lined up with one in front of the other. If you're only going forward and backwards, that's totally fine. And for a boxer whose style is to either be stationary or to only strike forward and backwards, they can get away with that without much problem. Think about it this way too, as far as just styles with boxers. More of a fencer style boxer, typically a longer style boxer, can get away with literally being on a tightrope. And they're not going to have that much challenge with it because they're going to stick their jab out. It actually helps. It does help because they're going to maximize the siding up of their torso. It helps to maximize their length with their jab and minimize how big they are, right? It's going to side it up. If you're going to slide through a space, you're going to do it sided up. Now, you can also utilize this as a short fighter as well, but just keep in mind you're going to lose some of your lateral movement. But we want to kind of find that happy middle ground starting off of having one foot in front of the other, but also not being on that tightrope, having one foot slightly offline. Or the way that I like to say it oftentimes is have the right foot or the rear foot slightly off to this side by a few inches. Now, there's a few different schools of thought on this. The philosophy that I coach and teach that was passed down from Chuck Bodak, who worked with over 50 world champions, including he was the Olympic coach for Muhammad Ali, who coached my father, who fought in Chicago and worked with many pro fighters over the decades and spent about 50 years in boxing, is to have close to that tightrope position, but again, like I said with the foot, just a few inches off to the side. So you're still getting the benefits of that sided up position, minimizing how big of a target you are. And if you look at most all great fighters, they're in this type of stance, as opposed to a more squared up stance where it's almost like you see this with other martial arts, right? You see this with Muay Thai, where their rear leg is a little bit more in front than a boxer's rear leg would be typically, because they need to be able to get that leg off the floor to kick. But of course, in boxing, we're not doing those things. And so therefore, there isn't that much benefit to it. Now, again, you can make the argument that it will help your lateral movement. And so again, there's a time and a place where you as a boxer, you need to learn how to have a home, how to have a base. But then once you've built that base in that home, learn how to modify it, change it around in the proper conditions. Don't get stuck in this analog style that I can only be this way, I have to stand this way, and then you constantly have to almost like be neurotic in your sparring and in your fights to make sure you're in that position. I've seen that hurt some people, as opposed to other people where they have the idea of like nothing matters. And sometimes those people do really well because they're not trapped into a box. All right. So that's important. So there's foundation, there's concepts, but then there's also the limitations of those foundations and those concepts. And at the end of the day, it's the results that count. All right. Now, let's talk about straight line attack, because we're using this drill to go forward and backwards, but typically for the straight line of attack. We'll talk about the backwards in a second. Now, we're making sure that our feet are slightly offline because we do want to allow for some lateral movement as well. One note as well is that it helps, particularly if you're like a medium-sized fighter, meaning you're not super long and just, you keep them at the end of your stick. So therefore you get, some hooks come at you, right? You might block a hook. If you're on a tightrope, that's going to be easier to knock you off balance. If you have that foot slightly off to the side, it's going to allow you to have better balance with blocking hooks and things of that nature and allow you to counter better. And then also, too, when you throw your rear punch, if you're orthodox, your straight right hand, or if you're southpaw, your straight left hand, and you twist on your back foot and you're on that tightrope, that's going to be very revealing and your balance is going to be pretty poor on that one. Versus if it's just slightly off to the side, again, just by a couple inches, it's going to allow you a little bit of that stability laterally. All right, but straight line attack. So we need to be able to attack in a straight line. Now, that's maybe sacrilege to some people in their boxing world, that, you should never attack in a straight line. Well, as we all know, right, the basic stuff of that, the quickest point between, or the quickest way to get between 2 points is a straight line, right? That's number one. Then if we can apply the concept that we can all agree upon, is that if someone attacks you, you don't want to go straight back, right? If someone attacks you, the rule that I was taught, and it's a pretty good rule, is you don't want to take more than 2 steps straight back, right? Before you plant and shoot something or go off to the side, right? And of course, you can just initially go off to the side, kind of circle off, like I've talked about in other videos. So if someone's attacking you, you go whoom, like that, and then you can literally circle yourself back to the ring or to the center of the ring. Instead of going straight back, where do you end up? You end up on the ropes. You end up more on your heels, and there's not much good to be gained from that. Now, if you take a couple steps straight back, it allows them to build some momentum, and then you can sit down and plant on something and really run them into something hard, or spin off with a hook and things like that. That's all fine and good, right? Now, because of this, we need to apply this to our attacks. If we attack slightly curved, then it encourages for them, our opponent, to curve off, right? We want to be able to attack with a double, triple jab straight down the line and drive them straight to the ropes. And we get them to the ropes, and now we've eliminated one of the 3 options they have as far as movement, right? And we can work them, right? Because think about it, if they're in the center of the ring or off the ropes, they have the option to go back. Once they're on the ropes, they've lost that option. They can only move side to side, or they can try to push you back or smother. And that's it. So the multi-jab, and watch my multi-jab strategy video where I talk about a lot of these concepts in depth, but it's important to be able to jab straight in. Now, of course, it is important also to be able to jab off to the side, right? If you're more so just boxing in the ring and not looking to be aggressive, then absolutely you do want to circle off with jabs. If someone's attacking you with wild, stupid shots, you typically do want to circle off with a jab because it will turn them as you're punching them, right? But again, we need to be able to attack in that straight line. If we're always constantly curving, typically off to our lead side, that's going to allow our opponent to curve off to their lead side, and then we're going to have a ring around the rosy situation in the ring, as opposed to driving them back, getting them on the ropes, doing our work, and also cutting off the ring. All right. So it's important to practice this with this straight line of tape. And then what you can do with this is a fun little drill you can do is single, double, triple, and even quadruple jabs on the line of tape. So this is something that I've done with my people and was done with me by a conditioning coach that worked with us when I was boxing. And it's a great one. And that's, you call single jab. Everyone shoots a single jab. They take that quick, snappy step, bringing both feet with the jab. Then double, boom, boom. Then triple, boom, boom, boom. Then maybe quadruple, ba, 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 ba. And they focus on that explosiveness, doubles and triples, etc., and really being explosive with it. And you can just work that up the line, turn around, work that again, going down the line. Because typically in boxing, it's not always the case, but typically, I was reminded of that. I'm reminded of this almost every single time that I have someone fight or anything like that, that aggressiveness is very important and helpful. And, with just to kind of dive into coaching philosophy and things like that, it's easy to get wrapped up in a lot of, and I'm guilty of this, of different, boxing strategies and tactics and techniques and things like that. But man, I've had so many people just win, particularly on the amateur scene, with just the style of being aggressive, going forward, throwing hard punches, being in great shape. That's the really, if you want to get down to the nuts and bolts of boxing, that's the nuts and bolts of boxing. All right. Now, let's move on to the drill number 2, and that's sidestep drill. Okay. So we're going to use this tape on the floor to measure our sidesteps. Now, the importance of sidesteps, you probably know them, but let me give you some thoughts on it, is obviously, like we're talking about, just to disagree with myself earlier or to add more nuance, if we're only on that straight line, that's a problem. And by the way, too, when we're attacking on a straight line, meaning we're jabbing straight down the line, that doesn't mean that, number one, our head has to be on the line, right? We can slip our head off as we jab. We can also mix in, a bob in between that. But then also as well, you have this other thing. You have two hands, right? And so your other hand can be working defense as you're jabbing in, for instance. Okay? So there's a lot of things you can do while you jab on a straight line. Now, of course, it's also good to get off the line. So that's what we're going to talk about in drill number 2 of these basic tape footwork drills. So with the sidestep, though, it's easy to overstep, to be too big. So that's where you start off with one foot on the line, and then you sidestep over so the other foot's on the line. And this also helps to make sure that you're not on that tightrope. But it gives you a good gauge of the amount that you want to sidestep, and then you can work your punches off of that. And again, it's just a great tool to make someone have to recalibrate where you are, right? If you take those little steps, which are the quickest, they conserve energy, and also they allow you to throw off of quickly, then you're going to be making your opponent have to reset their aim for where you are. And when you box somebody like this, or if you work at this and make this efficient for you, it can give people a lot of trouble because they'll be maybe turning slightly with a punch to block it, etc., and you're stepping over to that side, and now you've really put them out of position. Now, we can combine this sidestep drill with the first drill, right? So we combine drill number 1 with drill number 2. So we work on jabbing on that straight line, and then we work on jabbing across, right? And you can also use the tape in another way to do this, to just jab across laterally. Now why are you doing this, all right? This is creating an L shape. So, or it could be a T shape. But so you're going up, you're jabbing up, and then you're jabbing off to the side, right? Like an upside down L. Let's go L. Here, boom, and then that way, right? Start off here, center of the ring, jab them to the ropes, and then you jab and cut them off, right? You jab them to the ropes, and you jab and cut them off. So that concept is very important because once you get somebody to the ropes, they might slide off. We want to stay with them. And we need to learn how to stay with them with our feet, but then also with our jab. All right. But so just practicing the footwork portion, step, 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 cut off, cut off, cut off, step, 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 cut off, cut off, cut off. Very helpful. And again, it makes an L shape or a T shape. Typically with your line of attack, that's going to be an L shape. All right. Now let's go to drill number 3, the bounce in and out drill. All right. I could call this something popular now, like the Soviet style drill, right? That's something that's come around a lot. Now, why does it come around a lot? Because people like Bevo, and there's probably a few others that I'm not naming, have gotten popular and done well. And so therefore, on the internets, it makes everybody or a lot of people get all, clickbaity and talky about Soviet style, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, like I was talking to a guy just starting to box with us the other day, and he asked me, like, what do you think about Soviet style boxing? And I was telling him, hey, well, what is Soviet style boxing? Oh, well, it's, you couldn't really explain it. And I was like, well, how does that differ from like how Muhammad Ali boxed? Or how does that differ from like this, that, and the other thing? How does Soviet differ from Cuban style boxing? And of course, you can make an argument, a pretty decent argument for how, like, let's say, like more of stylistically Mexicans fight versus maybe a Soviet style boxing. But at the end of the day, or like they say, like Gennady Golovkin, right? Gennady Golovkin came from the Eastern Bloc Soviet style system, but look at how he boxed, right? So did Lomachenko, right? So just like all of these boxes are arbitrary. They're arbitrary. They're not helpful. And like I was explaining to this guy, what I'm about philosophically is just building up the base. And then you, as a boxer, dip your toe into some of these different tools, right? It's kind of like asking someone like, hey, what do you think about a screwdriver? Like, well, screwdriver is good to unscrew a screw. That if it's a flat head, it's a flat head. If it's a Phillips head, it's a Phillips head, right? What do I think about flatheads? Well, what about them, right? They're tools. They're tools. And just like with any tool, if you try to use a Phillips head to, fix something that needed a hammer, it's not going to be that useful. You can try to hammer it with the screwdriver, but it's just not going to be that helpful. So every style has its benefits and its limitations, and that's where more of what, is people don't say American style, right? I'm very proud of that because it goes along. I probably with what the philosophy of what I coach is. I'm probably an American style coach, meaning we talk about a lot of things. We do a lot of things. We incorporate things. We steal like an artist from anything and anywhere we can to, to do what's most effective for the athlete themselves versus getting stuck in this kind of assembly line type coaching, or what I've talked about in other videos I've heard referred as clone coaching, like with talking to a baseball recruiter saying that, there's something they call clone coaches where the coach has everybody do everything exactly the same way, right? They bat the same, they throw the same, they do this, that, and the other thing the same. And the coaches produce a certain level of success, but they never produce that superstar athlete. And that's, in my opinion, and in his opinion as well, because they don't allow them to do what I'm talking about, which is to dip and to try different things once they've built up the base. There's one thing to build up a base. Now, some coaches, they don't build up a base, right? Most coaches do, okay? Again, I'm not one of these guys going to tell you, hey, your coach sucks and all these coaches suck. No, that's not the case. No, most coaches are very good. But like I'm saying, most coaches, they build up a base, but some don't even build up a base. They just have people go at it and almost kind of learn intuitively along the way. And sometimes that works, right? Just to undermine everything I'm saying. Sometimes that works, right? Because there is a talent factor in boxing, a propensity to being scrappy and athletic. And you see it in the gym. Guys come in and they just get it. They just understand boxing almost intuitively. They can't explain it, but they can do it, right? I can explain it. I can kind of do it. But, and then you got other guys that they can't explain it, they can't do it. And that's why they need to go through some of these things. And then, of course, as we go up levels, though, those intuitive guys, they also have to work on, these techniques and foundational things that I'm talking about here, because the holes will get exposed sometimes later down the road. Now, okay, long intro to the bounce in, bounce out drill. But with this, it's more that amateur style classic. We're bouncing in, bouncing out, going in and out of range, right? Poking, stepping out, poking, stepping out. It's important to not just step in and stay there, right? So typically we do that with our straight punches. We do with anything though, but we jab in, step out. 1, 2, step out, in and out. We get on the battlefield, we get off the battlefield. We open up the door, we shoot, we close the door, right? Um, Basic stuff, but important stuff to help you stay light on your feet and to do it again with a measure that's going to make sure that you're not over jumping in, right? And it's just a good way to get more awareness of your movement and of how much you move your feet, because that's something with all of these drills that is helpful with a thing like tape, is that it is just a objective measure of how much movement you're doing. So it's just, there's a lot of benefits to it. Now you've stuck around for the number 3 thing that you need, right? You got your floor, you got your tape, painter's tape, not duct tape. Don't piss your mom off or your gym owner off. So you got those 2 things. This third thing you really need, and I was reminded of it when I filmed these little clips that I used, and because I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. And it's like when I merged my location that I've had for over a decade, we still have our Keppner Boxing franchises, but when I merged my Athens Keppner Boxing location into the X3 location in Athens so that we can work together with X3 and, do a lot of amazing big things together coming on down the road, I realized, like, wow. And all my fighters realized, so I'm very proud of all my fighters and boxers. They're like, where's the mirrors? And it was funny because, they opened up that gym that we merged together, and with the idea of like they didn't want to be they want to be a place focused on internal growth, right? Growth as a martial artist, so therefore they didn't want to be about the aesthetic that mirrors can incentivize. But that's missing the point, right? And that's where they didn't have a good boxing program, and that's where I guess it's something a little more specific to boxing. But I know other martial artists use mirrors and everything else, but it's something very, very steeped in the history and the technique and also the philosophies that we coach and I coach with boxing, utilization of the mirror. It is so important to have that mirror with these type of drills. And if you don't, these type of drills can actually hurt you. I've had it hurt me. There's been times where I haven't had a mirror and I'm training my footwork, training different things, and I'm looking down at my feet to check. And what happens is then you start leaning forward, right? And then you start putting yourself in this position that is not the position you want to be boxing in. I see it all the time, by the way. Watch out for yourself when you shadow box. The guy's looking at the floor when they're shadow boxing, right? You might do it. You probably do it, right? If you're watching this, there's a 70% chance that you do it when you shadow box. They look at the floor because their chin is down versus looking up where they would be boxing somebody. And I like a good check of that is to keep this contracted. Keep your forehead and your brow contracted, because that means that you are actually looking up at where you should be with your chin down. Or else, you're probably staring at the floor. And now you're building a habit that every time you box, you're freaking gazing at the floor. And contrary to popular mythology and everything else, it's not a good place to look. You don't look at their feet. That's not good, right? Because it's also going to make you lean forward as well. Now, you get the mirror. Super cheap, I don't know what the prices are in other countries, but you go to Home Depot or whatever, buy a mirror, buy a pretty big mirror for like $45-$50, right? And it's a big investment in your boxing future. Get that mirror, put it up, and use that to check yourself. Use that to look over, and you can do it from forward and back, forward view. Obviously not backwards. You don't have eyes in the back of your head, right? But standing in front of the mirror, but also standing looking at it to the side, because that also helps you be able to gauge where your weight is, right? You can see, oh man, holy crap, I'm leaning forward all the time. And of course, a video is another great way to do that, right? We all have cameras now on our phones and things like that. That's great. The challenge with that is it's not instantaneous feedback. So you can watch a video of yourself and be like, damn, I'm leaning forward a lot. But you don't have that correction in that moment. But with a mirror, right? Let's say I'm facing that way in my stance. I can look over to the side in the mirror and I can see where my weight is, or I can see where my feet are in relation to that tape. So I can get the feel of how much movement I'm doing without having to look down and compromise my stance, my position, and everything else. All right? So very, very, very important thing. All right. So you need those 3 things. The mirror, and again, too, the mirror can be utilized for everything else, including technical shadowboxing, like I've talked about in other videos. All right. I hope you got some benefit from this video. Do some of these drills, work on them, particularly if you're just kind of getting going in boxing, 0 to 6 months, even a year, really, depending what your foundational base is like. And if you like it, make sure you click the like button, comment below, share your thoughts, subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. Consider becoming a channel member level 2, and also consider buying me a cup of coffee, because that keeps me going, right? $2, $3, $5, $10, super thanks. Helps keep Coach Keith caffeinated. Appreciate your support, guys, and watch out for the next video.